Good morning. My name is Joshua Stearns, and this is my oral presentation on vaccinations, specifically vaccinations in children, and there being no link between vaccinations and autism. The original author of Vaccinations Causing Autism was a man named Andrew Wakefield, and he wrote in a medical journal called The Lancet. And in that journal, he wrote an article about how vaccinations cause autism. Well, the Lancet issued a peer review, and there was a group of doctors that reviewed his evidence, and they did their own case studies, and they found out it was actually completely false. And in their research, there was an investigation done on Andrew Wakefield, and they through that investigation found out that he, in fact, was fabricating all of these lies for monetary gains for himself. And since then, he has lost his medical license, and the Lancet has openly rebuked and debunked his whole claim and his whole statement, and they retracted it from the journal. In the amount of time that it took for them to do that, however, the damage had already been done. And in a growing culture, and in a culture growing of more health oriented and health conscious people, they grabbed hold of this concept because they were growing more and more aware of what they're putting into their body. They're growing more and more aware of the things that they eat and just health conscious, and becoming more aware of the their overall health, which in my line of work is very good to see because it gives me hope. I work in emergency medicine as a paramedic, and we a lot of the time see a lot of the worst. Cardiovascular disease is the number one killer in America, and so we see a lot of people that haven't taken care of their bodies, and haven't been aware of the things that they have been eating or putting into their body, and haven't been exercising. So seeing a culture grow more health oriented is great. However, they are becoming to the point where they're saying that vaccinations, they are not good, and they cause autism and these things that just aren't true. And what we're seeing is a lot of communities. It's not just isolated one person here or there. It's like a whole community of people are coming to an agreement and saying, we're not going to vaccinate ourselves, and we're not going to vaccinate our children. And that's very unfortunate because what we're seeing through that is a rise in diseases that have been long since gone because of vaccinations. And all it takes is one community to not get vaccinated for that to come back. And it's most unfortunate for the children because there's a higher fatality rate of even the flu, or even like measles, mumps, and rubella are making a comeback. But even the flu has a high fatality rate in the older population, and the newborns and younger children, because their immune systems are either failing, or their immune systems are just too new that they don't have the capacity to defend themselves against such a disease pathogen. So even something as common as the flu virus, influenza. And by getting them vaccinated, they now have the capacity to fight. Their antibodies have been built up enough to fight off that type of disease. Will they still contract some sort of symptoms? Yes. And so it's what we're seeing is these whole communities are, like in recent events, there was a whole community of anti-vaxxers that contracted the mumps disease. So we're seeing whole communities of people affected by diseases that have been essentially wiped out by vaccination, which is unfortunate for us to see as medical professionals, because we know that yes, there's no cure to it, but there is a defense against it. And so that's a little disheartening for us. But through my research, I have interviewed two registered nurses, one of which who specializes in vaccinating children. And neither of them have said that they have seen any kind of adverse reaction to the vaccine, save for redness at the insertion site, pain at the insertion site, maybe a little bit of the symptoms of the vaccine, which are all common things and to be expected. There was only one event where the person I interviewed said that she had seen an allergic reaction to the vaccine, which is why they ask if you're allergic to peanuts or you're allergic to shellfish, because those things can cause an allergic reaction, and there are certain of those things in the vaccine. So through my research, I have seen that there's just very, very little or to no evidence supporting the anti-vaxxers' claim that vaccines cause autism, vaccines are bad. The only thing that the only evidence that they have that I feel like is their strongest arguing point is that vaccines were a derivative through an aborted fetus. Like they took that tissue and researched it and studied it and created not a whole vaccine out of it, just part of the genetic makeup of the vaccine. And it wasn't like the woman got an abortion to create a vaccine. It wasn't like the medical community said, hey, you need to get an abortion because we need to make a vaccine. No, the woman just got an abortion, and the fetus, the aborted fetus, was then used it was then used to save many lives. Many lives are saved each year by vaccines. And I find it also very peculiar to see that the same community, whenever the Center of Disease Control issues a recall on, say, lettuce or meat because of E. coli, these health-oriented organizations and people and communities, they take that all as gospel. But whenever the same agency, the Center of Disease Control and Prevention, says vaccines save lives, everybody should get vaccinated. Now there's some, sinister group of people, and I just don't feel like people are well educated enough to the point where they can say, vaccines cause autism, because a lot of the times are people that aren't even involved in the medical field, and they all have very loose first-hand accounts or somebody say so. So this is my oral presentation on vaccines and why I feel like everybody should get vaccinated. And because I feel like everybody should get vaccinated, because if the vaccines aren't 100% effective, because so say I get vaccinated and my body doesn't take the vaccine very well. So if my neighbor gets vaccinated and his takes perfectly and he's completely immune, and I'm only half immune, and my other neighbor, he takes it and say he's 75% immune and our whole neighborhood takes it, then we have zero risk of getting that disease because of herd immunity. And I feel like it's my responsibility to take care of my neighbor. And if the very basic thing for me to be able to do that is to get vaccinated, then I'm going to be a huge proponent of doing that for myself, for not only my safety, but for my neighbor's safety as well. And this concludes my oral presentation on vaccinations. Thank you, and God bless.